The great assembly hall in New York buzzed with nervous energy as delegates from every nation on Earth gathered for the most important meeting in human history. Ambassador Kung Ho Park stood at the center podium, his gray hair neatly combed and his black suit pressed to perfection. Behind him, massive screens showed the 7 alien ships floating in space above, Earth like giant silver teardrops. Park cleared his throat and the room fell completely silent. Even the whispered conversations in the back rows stopped. Everyone knew this moment would change everything. "My fellow humans," Park began, his voice carrying clearly through the speakers. "Today we stand at the edge of a new world. The beings who call themselves the Kethran Federation have come to us with open hands and generous hearts." In the third row, Dr. Minchu Kim fidgeted in her seat. She was a small woman with intelligent eyes and short black hair. Her fingers tapped nervously against the thick folder in her lap. As Earth's top expert on ancient civilizations, she had spent the last 3 weeks studying every piece of information. The aliens had shared about their history. Something was wrong. She could feel it in her bones. Beside her, Admiral Jae-won Lee sat perfectly still in his military uniform. His metals caught the light as he breathed slowly and deeply. The Admiral was known for his calm mind and sharp instincts. Right now, those instincts were telling him to be very careful. "The Kethrans bring us gifts beyond our wildest dreams," Park continued from the podium. "Medical technology that can cure any disease. Energy systems that will end pollution forever. Ships that can travel between stars in days instead of centuries." The crowd murmured with excitement. Many delegates leaned forward in their seats, their eyes bright with hope and wonder. Minsu opened her tablet and scrolled through pages of data. The information was incredible. The Kethrans had detailed records of dozens of alien civilizations, spanning thousands of years. Each species had a complete history of first contact, technological exchange, cultural development. But there was a pattern that made her stomach twist with worry. "Second thoughts, Doctor?" Admiral Lee whispered. Noticing how tense she looked, Minsu turned her tablet so he could see the screen. "Look at this carefully," she said, in a voice so quiet only he could hear. "Every single species they have worked with follows the exact same path. First contact happens. The aliens share technology. The species advances rapidly for a few years. Then the records just ... stop." Lee studied the data, his trained military mind quickly seeing what she meant. They all reached the same level of development before disappearing. Not disappearing, Minsu corrected. Fading, like they just lost interest in growing or exploring. The last entries for each species talk about peace and contentment. But there are no more innovations, no more art, no more progress. On the art stage, the Kethran ambassador stepped forward. Voxstar was nearly 8 feet tall, with skin that looked like living crystal. When light hit it, colors danced across its surface like rainbows in ice. Its voice was perfectly pleasant, but something about it felt rehearsed. "People of Earth," Voxstar said, "your species has impressed us greatly. In just a few thousand years, you have gone from simple farmers to space travelers, create beautiful art, solve complex problems, and show remarkable courage in the face of challenges." The audience clapped enthusiastically. Several delegates stood up, their faces glowing with pride. "We have seen this potential before," the alien continued. "We have guided many species to reach their full flowering, and we offer the same gift to humanity." Minsu felt ice in her veins. "Guided to reach their full flowering," she repeated, under her breath. "What happens after something reaches full flowering?" Lee understood immediately. "It gets harvested." They looked at each other with growing alarm. Around them, the other delegates were smiling and nodding as Voxstar painted a picture of humanity's bright future among the stars. But Minsu and Lee were seeing something else entirely. "You must be careful not to jump to conclusions," Lee said carefully. "But these patterns you have found ... are too consistent to be coincidence," Minsu finished. "Every species gets the same gifts in the same order. Medical technology first, then energy systems, then transportation. It is like following a recipe." Voxstar raised one crystalline hand, and the room fell silent again. We know this is a momentous decision. We do not ask for your answer today. Take time to consider our offer. Study our gifts. See what we can build together." The crowd erupted in applause that lasted for several minutes. Delegates shook hands and embraced each other, their faces bright with excitement for humanity's future. But in the third row, two people sat very still. "We need to talk," Lee murmured to Minsu. "Privately, tonight," she nodded, closing her tablet. "I will bring everything I have found, all the data, all the patterns." As the crowd began to file out of the assembly hall, chattering excitedly about the wonderful news, Minsu and Lee remained in their seats. They watched Voxstar speaking, pleasantly with Ambassador Park, its crystalline skin shimmering under the lights. "I hope we are wrong," Minsu said quietly. "So do I," Lee replied. "But if we are right, humanity is in more danger than anyone realizes." They finally stood and walked toward the exit, their minds already working on what they needed to do next. 2. Years had passed since the Kethrins arrived, and Seoul looked like a completely different city. Dr. Minsu Kim stood at the window of her laboratory on the 15th floor. Watching the blue glow of alien energy conduits snake between the buildings like glowing rivers. The light was beautiful. It made her feel sick to her stomach. She turned back to her computer screen where numbers climbed higher every day. The dependency meter showed 73% in bright red letters. Nearly 3/4 of everything humans used to live their daily lives now came from Kethrin technology. "This is getting worse," she said to Admiral Jae-won Lee, who stood behind her chair studying the same data. His uniform looked the same as always, but his face had grown more worried over the past months. "Look at this screen too," Lee said, pointing to another monitor. "These numbers show how much humans are creating new things. Innovation rates are down 40% from 2 years ago. Our military is also getting weaker. People are not training as hard or thinking as sharp as they used to." Minsu rubbed her tired eyes. "It is like everyone is becoming lazy and happy. They get everything they need from the Kethrins, so they stop trying to make things themselves." The laboratory door suddenly burst open. Do-hyun Choi, Minsu's young research assistant, rushed in with his tablet clutched in both hands. His face was pale, and his hands were shaking. "Dr. Kim, you have to see this right now," he said breathlessly. "I have been working day and night on the Kethrin historical records. I found something terrible." Do-hyun connected his tablet to the main screen. Charts and graphs filled the display, showing data from dozens of different alien civilizations across thousands of years. "Every single species gets the same gifts in the exact same order," he explained, his voice getting higher with excitement and fear. "First, the Kethrins give medical technology to cure diseases. Then, they give energy systems to power everything. Then they give transportation to travel between planets." Minsu felt her heart start beating faster. "Show me the timeline for each species." Do-hyun tapped his tablet and new charts appeared. "Look at this. Every species follows the same pattern. The gifts come at the same intervals. The dependency levels grow at the same rate. Even the psychological changes happen on the same schedule." Lee stepped closer to the screen. "This is not friendship. This is not even business. It's like following a recipe to cook something." "Exactly," Do-hyun said. "They are not being generous. They are following a formula that they have used many times before." At the same moment, far above Earth on Luna Station, Captain Yoon Nam was discovering her own troubling information. She sat in her command chair surrounded by screens showing patrol ship reports from around the solar system. Her short black hair was pulled back in a tight bun. Her captain's uniform was perfectly pressed despite the long hours she had been working. The latest report made her jaw clench with anger. The Kethrins had requested detailed maps of Earth's defensive positions, claiming they needed the information for safety assessments. But the questions they were asking were becoming more and more specific. They want to know exactly where. "Our weapons are stored," she said to her communications officer. "They want to know how many soldiers we have and where they are stationed. They want to know which cities have the best defenses." She opened an encrypted communication channel to Admiral Lee back on Earth. His face appeared on her screen, and she could see the worry in his eyes. "Admiral, I need to report something urgent," she said. The Kethrans are mapping all of our military weaknesses. They ask questions about our defenses every day. They want to know things that friends should not need to know. Lee nodded grimly. We're seeing the same pattern here, Captain. They are being very systematic about everything they do. Whatever they are planning, they are being very careful and methodical. Back in the Soul Laboratory, Minsu had made the most frightening discovery of all. She pulled up the final charts showing what happened to each alien civilization in the Kethran records. Look at this, she said, pointing to a specific measurement on the screen. Every extinct civilization reached the same level of technological development before they disappeared. They all got to the same point of dependency on Kethran technology. Duhayan checked his calculations. What level did they reach? 75%, Minsu said quietly. They all reached 75% dependency, and then their civilizations just stopped growing, stopped creating, stopped existing. As independent species, Lee looked at the current dependency meter for Earth. It showed 73%. We have 2% left, he said. 2% before we reach the same level as all the dead civilizations. The room fell silent, except for the humming of computers and the distant sound of traffic from the soul streets below. Through the window, the blue glow of Kethran energy conduits pulsed like a heartbeat. Spreading through the city like veins carrying alien blood, Min-Su stood up and walked to the window. We need to do something, she said. We need to warn people. We need to find a way to stop this before it is too late. But who will believe us? Duhayan asked. Everyone is so happy with the Kethran gifts. They think we are being paranoid. Lee straightened his uniform. Then we need to find proof that no one can ignore. We need to find out what really happened to those other civilizations. The dead planet floated in the darkness of space like a giant gray stone. It had no name, only a number. Kethran Archive 7. Dr. Minsu Kim pressed her face against the small window of their stolen transport ship and stared at the lifeless world below. No clouds moved across its surface. Snow lights twinkled in the darkness. Nothing lived there anymore. Are you sure about this? Admiral Jae-Won Lee asked from the pilot's seat. His hands gripped the controls tightly as he guided their small ship toward the planet's surface. The coordinates were hidden in the Kethran data files, Minsu replied. If we want to know the truth about what happened to the other civilizations, this is where we will find it. Their ship landed with a soft bump on the dusty ground. Through the windows, they could see the remains of a massive building complex. Stretching for miles in every direction, the structures were made of the same crystalline material as Kethran's skin. But these crystals were dark and cracked. They put on their environmental suits and stepped outside. The air was thin and cold, and their footsteps crunched on the dry ground. The silence was complete, except for the sound of their own breathing inside their helmets. This place feels like a graveyard, Lee said as they walked toward the nearest building. The entrance doors were enormous, designed for beings much larger than humans, but they opened easily when Minsu touched the control panel. Inside, the hallways stretched away into darkness, their walls covered with strange symbols that glowed faintly in the dim light. Motion sensors are picking up our presence, Minsu observed, watching her tablet. The facility is still active, even though it looks abandoned. They walked deeper into the building, their footsteps echoing loudly in the empty halls. Lighting flickered on as they moved, casting long shadows on the walls. Finally, they reached a massive chamber filled with data terminals and holographic displays. This must be the main archive, Lee said. Looking around at the hundreds of computer stations, Minsu approached the nearest terminal and placed her hand on the activation pad. The screen lit up immediately, displaying text in the Kethran language. She had learned enough of their writing system to understand the basic commands. Look at this, she whispered, her voice full of horror. Holographic images appeared all around them, showing the history of the Kethran civilization. But it was not the history they had been told. The displays showed species after species each. One followed through the same terrible process. The records were organized like a scientific experiment. Each alien civilization had its own file with detailed charts and graphs. The Kethrans had studied every species carefully, mapping their psychology, their technology, their art, and their military capabilities. They are not explorers, Minsu said, reading the translated text. They are not even conquerors. They are farmers. Lee joined her at the terminal, his face growing pale as he read the documents. They call it cultural synthesis. Each species is grown like a crop until it reaches the perfect level of development. Then they harvest everything valuable and let the species fade away. Minsu's hands shook as she accessed more files. The process was described in cold, clinical language. The Kethrans would identify a promising species and make contact. They would share technology in carefully measured amounts, creating dependency. While studying everything the species created, when the species reached peak development, the Kethrans would copy all their innovations, their art, their military strategies, and their scientific discoveries. Look at this file, she said, pointing to a section labeled with human symbols. They have been cataloging everything about us since the day they arrived. The human file was massive, containing detailed analysis of Earth's governments, military forces, cultural achievements, and technological capabilities. Minsu scrolled through pages of information about human psychology, social structures, and creative expressions. We are in Phase 7, she read aloud. The harvest phase. They are already copying our military strategies, our art, our scientific methods. They know everything about us. A sound from behind them made both humans freeze. Footsteps were approaching through the dark hallways. Lee immediately reached for his weapon, but Minsu grabbed his arm. You should not have come here, a voice said from the shadows. They turned to see Captain Yoonji Nam walking toward them, but she was not alone. 5 other humans followed her, all wearing military uniforms with patches that Minsu did not recognize. Their faces were serious, and their movements were careful and professional. You are working with them, Lee accused, his hand still on his weapon. You are helping the Kethrans. No, Captain Nam replied firmly. We are working against them. We have been fighting them in secret for months. She stepped into the light, and Minsu could see that her uniform was worn and patched. The other soldiers looked tired and battle-hardened, like people who had been through many difficult fights. We discovered this place 3 months ago, Nam continued. We have been studying their records and building weapons to fight them. We know about the cultural synthesis program. You know what they plan to do to humanity. Lee slowly moved his hand away from his weapon. Why did you not tell us? Because we needed to be sure you were truly on our side, Nam said. Too many people on Earth still believe the Kethrans are our friends. Could not risk exposure. Behind them, the holographic displays continued, showing the grim history of species after species. Each one had followed the same path that humanity was now traveling. The question is, Nam said, looking directly at Minsu and Lee, are you ready to fight for our species? Because the harvest is almost complete, we have very little time left. On the main display, humanity's file showed a completion percentage in bright red numbers, 78%, deep inside the Gangwon Mountains. Hundreds of feet below the surface, a secret facility hummed with activity 24 hours a day. Dr. Minsu. Kim sat at her workstation, her eyes red from staring at computer screens for too many hours. Her fingers moved quickly across the keyboard as she worked to understand how Kethran technology really functioned. Beside her, Engineer Hyanwoo Park wiped sweat from his forehead as he connected the final wires to a massive communication device. The machine was built from parts they had secretly collected over many months, combining human engineering with stolen Kethran components. The communication array is almost finished, Hyanwoo said, his voice tired but excited. Once we turn it on, we can talk to all the other resistance groups around the world. No more coded messages or dangerous meetings. Minsu looked up from her work. How long until it is ready? 2 hours, maybe 3, he replied. We need to test all the connections first. If the Kethrans detect our signal, they will find this place immediately. Cross the facility. Admiral Jae-won Lee stood in the command center surrounded by screens showing maps of the entire world. Red dots marked the locations of resistance cells that had been established in secret over the past 6 months. Captain Yoonji Nam appeared on one of the screens, reporting from her own hidden base. How many sites do we have working now? Lee asked. 37 confirmed locations, Nam replied. We have military groups, scientists, and civilian volunteers. The most surprising help has come from artists. They have been hiding resistance messages in their paintings and sculptures for months. In a corner of the facility, artist Sujin Yang worked carefully on what looked like a beautiful metal sculpture of a bird, but hidden inside the artwork were tiny data storage devices containing information about Kethran weaknesses and human defense plans. The Kethrans study our art. Very carefully, she explained to a young soldier who was watching her work. They catalog every painting, every song, every sculpture, but they do not understand the deeper meanings. They see the surface, but miss the hidden messages. She pointed to different parts of her sculpture. This wing contains communication codes. This eye holds weapon blueprints. This feather has escape routes for important people. They think it is just pretty decoration. Meanwhile, scientist Jinho Ru had been working day and night in the weapons laboratory. His team had finally made a breakthrough that could change everything. He ran excitedly toward the command center, carrying a small device that looked like a simple metal box. Admiral Lee, you need to see this immediately, he called out. I have solved the problem with their shield technology. Lee turned away from the tactical displays. Show me. Jinho placed the device on a table and activated it. A small energy field appeared around the box, shimmering like heat waves in the air. The Kethrans protect their ships and buildings with energy shields, Jinho explained. We could not damage them before because our weapons could not get through. But I discovered that their shields have a weakness. They cannot stop certain frequencies of energy. He picked up a simple human-made laser pointer and aimed it at the shielded box. The red dot passed right through the energy field without being stopped. We can build weapons that use these frequencies, Jinho continued. The Kethrans will not be able to defend against them because they do not know we have discovered their weakness. But even as the resistance made progress, events on the surface were moving faster than anyone had expected. Emsu watched the news feeds on her computer screen, and what she saw made her stomach turn cold with fear. Ambassador Park. The same human who had welcomed the Kethrans 2 years ago was giving a speech on television. But now he looked different. His movements were too perfect, his smile too wide, his eyes too bright. The Kethran Federation has generously offered to provide administrative assistance to Earth's governments, he was saying. They're advanced. Wisdom will help us make better decisions for our planet's future. On other news channels, similar announcements were being made in different languages. Kethran advisors were appearing in government buildings around the world. They claimed to be helping, but Minsu could see they were taking control. They know about us, she said urgently to Admiral Lee. They have detected our activities somehow. They are moving faster than we expected. Lee studied the news reports, his military training helping him see the patterns. Look at the timing! All these announcements are happening at the same time. This is not coincidence. This is a coordinated operation. He activated the communication system to contact all resistance cells. All units, this is Admiral Lee. The Kethrans are accelerating their timeline. We need to move to Phase 2 immediately. Prepare for full revelation of their true nature. As if the universe was responding to his words, alarm sirens suddenly began blaring throughout the underground facility. Red warning lights flashed on every wall, and automated voices announced emergency protocols. Minsu ran to the main observation screen, which showed the view from hidden cameras on the mountain surface. What she saw made her heart stop. Kethran. Ships were descending from the sky toward every major city on Earth. Not the 7 beautiful vessels that had arrived 2 years ago, but hundreds of darker, more threatening craft. They moved with military precision, taking positions over government buildings, military bases, and communication centers. The harvest is beginning, she whispered. Lee grabbed the facility's main communication microphone. All resistance cells. This is not a drill. Kethrans are revealing their true intentions. Execute all emergency protocols immediately. The fight for humanity starts now. Throughout the facility, people began running to their assigned positions. Weapons were distributed, communication equipment was activated, and final preparations were made for the battle that would determine the future of the human race. At exactly 12 o'clock in the afternoon, Every television screen, computer monitor, and communication device on Earth showed the same terrifying image. Voxstar, the Kethran ambassador, stood in the United Nations Assembly Hall, but he looked completely different now. His crystalline skin had turned dark and sharp, and his voice carried cold authority instead of fake warmth. "People of Earth," he announced, his words reaching every human on the planet. "Your species has reached the end of its useful development. Yes, we now take complete control of your world and your future." Deep in the underground facility beneath the Gangwon Mountains, Dr. Min-Soo Kim watched the broadcast with horror and rage. Admiral Jae-won Lee stood beside her, his hand clenched into a fist as he listened to the alien's words. Around the world, in 37 hidden bunkers and secret bases, resistance fighters watched the same broadcast. They had been preparing for this moment for months, but seeing it happen still filled them with fear and determination. "Your small resistance groups have been detected and cataloged," Voxstar continued, his voice echoing through speakers everywhere. "Your efforts are noted but completely unnecessary. 47 species before you have accepted peaceful integration into our system. Your fate is not special or unique." The alien paused, letting his words sink in. "You will be cared for and managed properly. Your creative works will be preserved. Technologies will be improved. You will be happy and content under our guidance." In the hidden facility, Min-Soo felt sick listening to the lies. She knew what peaceful integration really meant. It meant the slow death of human independence, creativity, and spirit. But then something unexpected happened. Captain Yoon Ji-nam's voice suddenly cut through every communication channel on Earth, overriding the Kethran broadcast. "You are wrong about one important thing," she announced from her command ship, orbiting Earth. "We are not like the other species. We do not accept defeat quietly." That was the signal everyone had been waiting for. The counterattack began immediately and simultaneously across the entire planet. Engineer Hyan-Woo Park pressed a single button in his control room, and hidden weapons systems activated all over the world. Missiles launched from secret underground silos, targeting Kethran ships and installations with perfect accuracy. The weapons had been built using Jin Ho-Ru's breakthrough technology, designed to penetrate Kethran's shields. At the same moment, artist Su Jin-young's sculptures and paintings revealed their true purpose. The hidden data storage devices activated, sending coded signals to thousands of electronic devices worldwide. Traffic lights, security systems, communication networks, and even home appliances suddenly turned against their Kethran controllers. "What is happening?" Voxstar demanded, his calm authority cracking as alarms began blaring in the background of his broadcast all around the world. Resistance cells emerged from their hiding places. Soldiers, scientists, engineers, and ordinary citizens who had been secretly preparing for this day took to the streets. They carried weapons that could pierce Kethran's shields and communication, devices that could not be jammed. But the biggest surprise came when the Kethrans tried to shut down Earth's infrastructure. For 2 years, they had believed that humans were completely dependent on their technology. They expected to paralyze human civilization by cutting off power, communications, and transportation. Instead, backup systems activated everywhere. Secret power plants came online, providing electricity to entire cities. Hidden communication networks connected resistance groups across continents. Alternative transportation systems moved people and supplies where they needed to go. "This possible?" Voxstar shouted as his ships began falling from the sky, their shields useless against human weapons. "Admiral," Jae-won Lee stepped forward to the main communication console in the underground facility. His voice was broadcast through captured Kethran networks, reaching not just Earth, but every corner of the galaxy. "We will tell you how," he said calmly. "We remembered the patterns. We studied your history. We learned about the 47 species you destroyed. And we chose to write a different ending to this story. The battle was fierce but short. Humanity had spent 2 years secretly preparing while pretending to be helpless and dependent. When the Kethrans revealed their true nature, they found themselves facing an enemy that was ready, organized, and determined to fight. Kethran ships crashed into oceans and deserts. Their control centers were overrun by human forces, Their communication networks were captured and turned against them. Within hours, the alien invasion was defeated, but humanity did not stop there. Using the captured Kethrin communication systems, they broadcast the truth about cultural synthesis to every species in the galaxy. Recordings from Archive 7 were transmitted to thousands of worlds, showing the real history of Kethrin partnerships. Response was immediate and overwhelming. Species that had been living under Kethrin control for generations suddenly understood what had been done to them. Rebellions erupted on hundreds of worlds. The Kethrin cultivation network collapsed in a matter of days. 6 months later, Dr. Min-Soo Kim stood once again in the same auditorium where the nightmare had begun. But now, instead of threatening Kethrin ships, the view through the grate windows showed vessels from dozens of liberated alien species. They had come to Earth to thank humanity and to form a new alliance based on true friendship and mutual respect. Today, we do not just celebrate our survival, Min-Soo announced too. The assembled delegates from across the galaxy, we celebrate the beginning of true galactic freedom. Celebrate the fact that some species refuse to accept defeat. Celebrate the human spirit that says no when others say yes to oppression. The audience erupted in applause that lasted. For many minutes, representatives from species that had been enslaved for centuries wept with joy. The galaxy had been freed because one species had refused to follow the pattern.